You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
Everyone, welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Thursday, October 19th. The 49ers are beginning their practice week later today in preparation for their Monday night clash against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm joined bright and early with Rob Stats Guerrera, as always on a Thursday. It's 7 a.m. on the West Coast, 8 for me, 10 for Rob. I've got my coffee in hand, hot and ready like a little Caesar's pizza. And Rob, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. You're making me want another coffee. I've already had one. Now I want one more.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, if you're much of a coffee drinker, because I've never seen you with coffee, but maybe you just don't pod with coffee. I don't know.
Every day. Need it first thing in the morning. I'm up at 6:30 every day because I got to get the kids ready for school. Have to have it. Absolutely essential.
That's why you have all this energy, like at all times. I think it all, makes a little more sense now. Look, quick shout out to 49K Pod listeners. That's right, all of you who check the pod out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We reached 20,000 audio plays all time yesterday. That is awesome. That is amazing to me. So I really appreciate all the audio listeners, of course, all the viewers as well. But that was a big milestone for the podcast. So definitely appreciate all the support, and we'll just continue growing. But Rob, as we start every single show on a Thursday this week in 49ers history, and I really wish that I can show you the clip on this one, but it would get flagged because it's from like Fox or whatever. So we're going to leave out the video, and I'll just say this. October 16th, 2011. Jim Harbaugh's 49ers complete a fourth quarter comeback against Jim Schwartz, Detroit Lions, which led to the infamous post-game handshake / squabble between these two coaches and both teams. And I actually love that this happened like the same week of the 49ers having just played, Jim Schwartz. As you guys know, he's the defensive coordinator of the Browns. He rightfully so will get some head coaching consideration again, probably after the season, if he could keep up what he's doing with the Browns. I don't know. Maybe he should get head coaching consideration based solely on the fact that he owns Kyle Shanahan. I hate to say it, but he owns Kyle Shanahan. He's 9-1 now over Kyle offenses. But we'll have the time that the 49ers and Harbaugh being pissed. You have a picture, Rob, of the handshake here. Oh, look at how angry Jim Schwartz was. He had a bit of little man syndrome on that day. It happens sometimes for us short people, but I mean, this was like kind of a moment to remember. At least we'll always have this, right?
The coaches almost fought after the game because Jim Harbaugh slaps Jim Schwartz on the back. Do you know the whole origin of that story?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty aggressive, right? Like he was super stoked about having just won the game, and he gave him a pretty like considerable like slap on his back.
Do you know why he gave him the slap on the back?
I thought it was just because he was like so excited of having just won.
No. So before the season, remember that was the lockout year. So there was no like communication between coaches and players, and Harbaugh was just taking over. He was a new head coach.
Yes.
And they're at dinner, Harbaugh and Schwartz, and they're having a conversation, and Schwartz looks at Harbaugh and is like, man, you're really screwed this year because you can't talk to your guys. Like, how are you supposed to, you're not going to win this year. You're in a terrible position. Well, apparently Harbaugh, that was all it took. Jim Harbaugh took that personal, to quote Michael Jordan.
He takes everything personal.
Right.
I love it.
And so then when they came back and won, Harbaugh was especially fired up, like, you don't think I'm going to win? Well, we just kicked your ass. So he gave him the back slap, and that's what precipitated the whole thing.
Okay, there was some blood boiling even before that day. That makes it so much better, I think. This was what a time to be alive. Like the Jim Harbaugh era in San Francisco was such a time, and I will hold dearly forever. But yeah, that was a really good one. The other reason that I felt that this one, was semi-relevant to this week, because we had a CJ Gardner-Johnson, former safety for the Eagles. He played with them last year.
Mhm.
Current safety for the Detroit Lions this year. Completely unprovoked, just started talking trash about Devo on Twitter. Then he went on Instagram Live to double down. Like, I don't know where this came from. Does this man not have anything to do that he's out here like hating on Devo for no reason? Like, I don't know if it stems back to the NFC championship game. I don't remember them really getting into that one, but it seems like Devo is just as confused as we are. And I will play a clip because Devo, as always, during the week, it was Wednesday yesterday, he joined the Kay Adams show and he was asked about it. And they showed a clip from CJ Gardner Johnson's Instagram Live. So I'll share the clip here as well and show Devo's reaction. Yeah. Audio.
It look like you about to cry.
Bro, listen, don't be friendly when you see me. Cause you be so flashy. You better hope, bro. You better hope all that talking you be doing when we see y'all, whatever round it may be. Cause I can guard you. You can't run routes. You're a running back. You're a running back. I ain't gonna sit here and play with you, little boy. Just cause you got a little bag, people gave you a little clout, man. You ain't nothing, bro. Stop playing.
It just sounds like he mad. I got a little bag and a lot of money, and nobody knows who he is.
Great response from Devo.
I mean, Devo has been on a tear lately. First, he had, that stuff to say about Micah Parsons on his podcast and being all butthurt about the F Cowboys t-shirt. And he says everything with like a straight face too. I love it. He has like this smug look on his face when he says it. And it really cracked me up when as soon as he saw the video start playing, he's like, look like he about to cry. I don't know. But so the reason that I thought it was relevant too is because it's looking likely that these two teams could meet in the playoffs at some point, right? Like, as it stands, both teams are 5-1. The Lions look great this year. All right. They're going to be a good team. They're going to be a contender, at least for a considerable playoff run. So leading up to it, I mean, if this is part of the script writers doing here, they're writing a good script here, because I think if there is a game between these two teams in the future, there's definitely a lot to look forward to.
I don't know, like you said, why CJ Gardner-Johnson decided to do this. It just seems really weird and random. I love the fact that Devo is not letting it go and that they are constantly chirping back and forth. But can I just say, CJ's right. Devo can't run routes. He is a running back. He can't do it. He can't do it. This was my pet project yesterday, Steph. Do you know how many of Deebo Samuel's career touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, have come in the red zone?
Oof. No, I don't know, but I would imagine it's not many.
5 out of 13 career receiving touchdowns, 5 of them have come in the red zone. Why? Because Deebo can't run the routes to get open in the red zone where he doesn't have as much space to move around. Compare that to Brandon Ayuk, who has 20 career touchdowns. You know how many of Ayuk's receiving touchdowns have come in the red zone? 18. Why? Because Ayuk is really freaking hard to cover. He can get open with minimal space in the red zone. It's why he was their best red zone receiving threat last year. Deebo can't do. CJ's right. So Deebo can get mad about it, but in that particular aspect, he's right.
But fine. Who cares though? Deebo is going to run over you whether it's as a running back or not. I mean, I think that's the point. If these two guys met at some point, I see Deebo, just trucking him probably for a big gain, and then who's laughing? You know what I mean? So I just don't know why it seems like people are always coming after Deebo. Of all people, of all players on the team, why do people think he's the one to try to make angry? Don't poke the bear, all this stuff. Have they not seen him play? He's not the one you want to mess with. People always think things are sweet behind the keyboard, behind the screen. But when the pads come on, Debo has been that dude, and he makes a lot of guys. He has made a lot of guys look silly. So CJ, watch out because you could be next. So I don't know where this is coming from, but it's silly to me.
Please give us a Lions 49ers matchup.
Yeah, at this point, we need it.
Because first play, Kyle's just going to dial up like a Debo screen, and Debo's just going to find CJ and run right at him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's done it to so many guys. Like, he's made Jalen Ramsey look silly. I think he was well on his way to making the Browns look a little silly and pay for that little squabble they had before the game. I really do. It's a shame that he went out of the game, as early as he did. But speaking of the injury, Debo also on Kay Adams talked about the injury and how his shoulder feels better than it did Sunday. So that's good. Remember, he was on Kay Adams yesterday. So one more day added to it. And mind you, the 49ers play Monday. So an extra day of rest should definitely help. He did mention his bicep momentarily going numb on Sunday. A little scary, but again, his words, he's feeling better. So we'll see how this week of practice goes for him. And I would imagine they keep it pretty minimal for him throughout the week. He's not one of those guys that necessarily needs to practice in order to be out there on game day. So I'm feeling optimistic about Debo, and I'm also feeling optimistic about Trent Williams, who was dealing with an ankle injury. What was scary about it, he came back into the game, which I guess we should feel good about. He finished the game. Then after the game, he was wearing like an orthopedic boot. So I didn't know what to make of it, but Kyle early in the week said Trent is day to day. So another guy who, look, if he doesn't practice, that's fine. In fact, don't let Trent practice at all this week. Just have him ready for Monday night. That is all we ask. But Rob, I think the biggest question we have is Christian McCaffrey, right? And quite frankly, we really don't even know what his diagnosis is yet because the 49ers haven't exactly been forthcoming about it. It just so happened, very big coincidence, that McCaffrey's MRI was scheduled the exact same time that, Kyle spoke to the media on Monday. So we really haven't heard much of anything since from the team, but we've seen reports that it's mostly just a pain tolerance thing for McCaffrey. So would you expect that he would be out there on Monday night?
I certainly hope not. Why? You can't beat the Vikings without Justin Jefferson, without Christian McCaffrey. You still have Kittle. You still have Ayuk. I wouldn't play Debo either. I wouldn't play Trent. They don't need to be gutting games out in week number 7. I rest them. It's the Vikings. And to me, Steph, I look at it this way. The Niners have 2 games left before the bye in week 9. If they go 1-1, I'm totally fine with that. If they're 6-2 going into the bye in week 9, I think they're in great shape. I would be totally fine with it. And if you rest those guys to the bye, you give them 3 full weeks to heal up. That to me is the best way to go. If you're trying to plan long-term for the rest of the season, why force it? This is Minnesota. It's not a division game. It's not anything like that. The Vikings stink. Okay. The Minnesota Vikings are terrible. You should be able to handle them. You flat out should. The Vikings have 2 wins this year. Who have they beaten? They've beaten nobody good. They're terrible. Handle your business against the Vikings. They've beaten the Panthers and the Bears. What do they have? A combined, 1 win between them on the year? You don't need CMC. You don't need Trent. You don't need Debo.
And, frankly, they were struggling a bit with the Bears as it was. There was a point they were tied in that game, and probably wasn't. I didn't watch the game, but it probably wasn't until after Justin Fields left that, the Vikings were able to take that one.
The 2 wins, they've had defensive scoop and scores in both games. Their offense can't do anything, and that's with Justin Jefferson.
That is true. Yeah, they're definitely a team kind of spiraling right now. I was talking with John and Wayne on the show about this yesterday, right? And we were getting flooded with comments of people saying, rest CMC, save him from himself, because if it's a pain tolerance issue, what I think is going to happen, Christian McCaffrey, who is maybe one of the biggest competitors in all of football, he's going to say, no, I feel fine. I'm good. I can play. He wanted to do it on Sunday, and it just so happened that, it was too much for him to continue playing. But maybe Monday night he feels just a little bit better, feels he can gut it out. So yeah, I mean, I understand exercising caution, but at the same time, if in fact it is just a pain tolerance issue, it's like, and there's no risk of like injuring something further, re-aggravating anything, then like why not have him out there? That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. But we truly don't know the details of this injury, so I guess we can't really say too much.
But how can there be no risk of injuring it further, right? If I punched you in the ribs and they were sore, and then I said to you, now go get in 15 to 20 car accidents, you're telling me your ribs wouldn't feel worse at the end after all the car accidents were over? Like, to me, I get it. Like, and I agree with you. He's going to want to play. But here's the other problem, Steph. It's not going to be Kyle, getting him in for 10 plays on third downs, right? If he plays, Kyle's giving him the full 20, 25 touches because that's how Kyle rolls. He just does that. And so to me, I don't play him because it's just, there's no need for it. What you risk is way, way more than what you would gain.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe the 49ers don't plan to play him Monday, right? And all of this is just a facade to get the Vikings to prepare for him because, you do have to prepare a lot for Christian McCaffrey. So they would spend a lot of time doing that. Maybe that is the plan, and that's why we're seeing all this like secrecy from the 49ers. Yeah, it is better to be safe with him. You want him for the long haul. But I think if Christian McCaffrey doesn't play, I think it's a great opportunity for Brock Purdy. And even if McCaffrey does play, I do still feel it's a big opportunity for Purdy to bounce back from what was, I think, a forgettable game for him. I mean, this was his worst game to date. I think it's the lowest completion percentage any Kyle Shanahan quarterback has had. And so, again, forgettable. He was missing guys who were open, just uncharacteristic all around from Brock. At the same time, I don't think we saw a defeated Brock. Like, I don't think we saw someone who was panicking. Like, he still looked poised out there. So I think those are all things to feel good about. I think he's going to bounce back against the Vikings. And we were just mentioning how their defense has been kind of spiraling and they're not very good. So just another reason, again, also primetime, to prove that, hey, what happened Sunday, that's not me, guys. Like, I'm just going to bounce back. And it doesn't matter if Christian McCaffrey's there or not. I'm going to look good on Monday night.
There are things that we are still learning about Brock Purdy. And I talked about this and people got mad at me when I said it because people want to act like Brock Purdy's a finished guy. He's not. Steve Young was on KMBR yesterday and they asked him like about Brock and should he wear a glove in the rain and is he bad in the rain? Steve Young's point was basically nobody knows, including Brock, because until you have gone through it at the NFL level, you don't know what it's going to be like. You don't know how you're going to react. You just don't know. So we have to learn these things. And one of the things that we're going to have to learn now about Brock is how does he respond off of a bad game? Do we see Brock come out and look a little like, hey, extra motivated? Like, you know what? I had a bad game. Now everybody's calling me a fraud. I'm not a fraud. I busted my ass to get here, last pick in the draft, and all I've done since I've gotten in is come in and kill it. Now I have one bad game in the rain, and everybody wants to, take a piece of my ass. All right, I'll show you something. And hopefully he comes out on Monday night and he does it. And I like to think that he does because he seems to have a little dog in him, as the kids like to say. But
Just
we're
a
gonna
dog.
we're gonna find out.
Yeah, we will. And I can argue that I think we already found out, at least just in a small glimpse, in that final drive where he had the offense marched out. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the prettiest drive. There were some misses on that one too, but he got them in field goal range on that final drive, despite how badly the offense was looking and reeling before that drive. So I think we can argue that we already saw him like make a little bounce back there. Now let's see if he could do it for, a full game, right? Which I think, he should be able to do. I have no doubt about that. He's had like quote unquote bad games before, and I say quote unquote because I don't think they've been like terrible. It's just like bad games compared to his standard or what we're used to seeing from him. And still the 49ers hadn't lost a game. So really it came to the 49ers as an entire team to have a bad game for them to lose one as Brock Purdy being the quarterback.
Right. That's the difference, though. They've always won, even when he's had his, quote unquote bad games. This time, like they won games probably that maybe they shouldn't have won when he had a bad game. But this time, he did his job, like you said, at the end of the game, and they should have won that game. I mean, you have a 41-yard field goal right down the middle. You expect whoever your kicker is, Jake Moody, Robbie Gould, Zane Gonzalez, Jose Cortez, Jeff Chandler. That's all the old Niners kickers I could think of. But they all should be expected to make that, but they didn't. And he lost, and he's got to, there's been some criticism of Brock this week, right or wrong. The criticism has been there. And so I do kind of want to see him come out with a little bit of fire and just chuck that thing around, be accurate, hit guys in stride. There were a lot of throws. He was just off. Just the ball placement was not where it needed to be. Missing Christian McCaffrey deep down the right sideline for a possible touchdown was huge. Just be on it and be sharp right from go this week.
Yeah, in a game where everything seemed to go wrong in all facets, if just one of those things had gone right, if maybe just one of those passes that we were talking about, he hit that accurately, it could have been a different ball game. We might be talking about a win, right? So, and not just the Brock Purdy passes, but any of the flags, any of the missed tackles, any of that could have changed the outcome of the game. So I think you still have to feel good about the 49ers even after that game. One thing, Rob, that I noticed after this one is like we kind of got like mature Kyle after when he was talking to the media. He took some accountability because with the injuries, I think like there were some questions about, some of the miscues that happened. Ray McLeod lined up incorrectly or like wasn't motioning correctly. And then I think Jordan Mason also had a miscue. I think there were a number of different issues that happened in that game after some of the injuries occurred and guys had to come in and maybe do some things that they hadn't been asked to do in a long time because, 49ers up to that point hadn't really dealt with injuries. So guys seem to not have been entirely prepared, right? And Kyle seemed to take some accountability for that. He did mention that, those guys are responsible for studying and that's on everybody, he says. And I think he meant like it is their responsibility, which is true. It's veterans. We're talking about Ray McLeod here. He's not new to the league. Jordan Mason, you want to earn snaps, man. You gotta be on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it is their responsibility, but it's also on him too, because he has to have these guys prepared. You have to have a plan ready for if you have Debo and McCaffrey gone in the same game, like those backups need to be ready to step in. And so to his point, it's on everybody. And he did say that it was on him. So I do give Kyle Shanahan credit for that because I think in the past, like he's been kind of criticized for maybe not taking as much accountability for things like that. And I just wonder what has changed from like these last maybe year or two where, we're seeing a more mature Kyle at the podium.
Don't you think it's weird that a team that literally ran out of quarterbacks because so many players got injured suddenly was not prepared for guys to get injured? Whether you want to put it on Kyle and on the individual players, and I think there's plenty of blame pie to go around for everybody to get their fill. And Kyle, you're right. He did admit, like, that's on me. But, like, damn, were you taken by surprise that guys could get injured? I mean, the 49ers have been in the top 10 most injured teams every year of Kyle Shanahan's 49ers tenure. So, like, this should not have caught anybody by surprise. And that's a bad look by the coaching staff and the players. Oh, we weren't prepared. When you've got Ray McLeod and Trent Williams crashing into each other on a screen pass, which, by the way, go back and watch that, Steph. It is set up beautifully. There are 4 blockers there and only 2 Browns defenders. All Ray has to do is catch it and he may score. And by the way, Brock Purdy, feel free not to dirt the ball. Like, actually get the ball to Ray McCloud, and that play still may have worked out. But it's just really weird to me that Kyle's like, yeah, we had guys in different spots and they weren't prepared, and that's on me. What were you doing all week, Kyle?
Yeah, what do the backups do all week? Like, don't they walk through the same things? Look, to be fair, the 49ers had been fortunate, with the injuries so far. And so maybe they hadn't had to think about these things like maybe they would in the past. But that being said, I mean, you still have to have your guys ready. And who knows who takes bigger blame? Like, should Ray McCloud have been ready and, studied his cues a little bit more? Yeah, sure. But yeah, as Kyle said, it's also his responsibility to have them ready too. So yeah, we'll see how that looks going forward, especially if like Christian McCaffrey is out. Like, do we see Elijah Mitchell look sharp out there? Do we see Jordan Mason knowing where to line up a little bit better this time? They have a week and an entire extra day to prepare. So I think they're going to be on their P's and Q's, and I think we'll see a sharper game from them on Monday.
I just thought of something. There was an interview that Kyle Juszczyk did, and I think it was with Richard Sherman. And Richard Sherman talked about how much Kyle Shanahan has to do and has to manage because he's the head coach and the offensive coordinator. And Juice said, I'm just flashed into my brain. Juice said Kyle has literally talked about the fact that because the 49ers are a veteran team, there are things he doesn't have to worry about because he just feels like they're going to be on it. They're going to be on their P's and Q's because they recognize where they are and what's at stake and yada, yada, yada. What if Kyle, just kind of assumed that the guys would be on it because it is a veteran team and all that stuff. And then when the bleep hit the fan on Sunday, he found out, guess what? They weren't prepared. Guess what? Yeah. You do have to do that. I bet you that's what happened.
I think that is what happens. And I think, yeah, for that reason that Kyle does have a lot to do. You've built this roster of, foundational guys who are veterans, blue collar players who you trust. Like you trust these guys to know what they have to do. The problem is that most of those guys, those foundational blue collar guys, are your starters. And so when the starters aren't in there, they know what they're supposed to do. But maybe the backup guys, they fall by the wayside because they're not as prepared. Maybe they don't have that exact same mentality. I mean, I really don't know. But clearly, Kyle does trust his team. They're all grown men to, know what they're supposed to do when their name gets called.
There are some lessons that are just better taught after a loss. Even though, like the 49ers have said, even after their wins, they said, hey, there's things to correct. We can get better at this, blah, blah, blah. It hits different after a loss because after you win on some level, there's always that tiny part of you that knows, you know what? Yeah, but we still won. Yeah, like against the Cowboys, for example, right? Are there things they could have got better at? Sure, but they won 42-10. So, like, how much urgency do you really feel to correct those things when you're winning by 32 points? Now you have the loss, right? Now you're not undefeated anymore. Now you've got people talking bad about you all week. Now you've got your individual performance that may have suffered in the game. It is just different to come in after a loss. And nobody says you have to be undefeated to win the Super Bowl. So, like, it's fine. It was an AFC loss, not in the NFC, not in the NFC West. This could be just a reset for the team a little bit. I think everybody needs that. They hadn't felt this in 16 straight weeks. And I think even the NFC Championship game, like George Kittle talked about, like, it didn't really feel like you got beat, like it was a loss because of what happened. It felt just like circumstances conspired to not make that a real contest. So you didn't really feel like you got beat for a very, very, very long time. And so I'm very interested to see how the team responds on Monday.
Yeah, it should be a good one. But another thing that is looming for the Vikings is that it should be a day filled with 49er fans. Vivid Seats is forecasting 43% of attendees at US Bank Stadium to be 49er fans on Monday night. And that is as of like Wednesday. So who knows, that number could grow when it's all said and done. It could be a pretty red place out in Minnesota.
Good.
So if you guys are, if any of you are going to the game, make sure you wear your red jerseys, make sure you get loud. And that stadium looks awesome. Like I really wish I could be going to that game. Minnesota is a pretty cool city. But yeah, I mean, for all this, like, it's another away game. We know what can happen in away games are weird, right? Like, as we just saw, this one fortunately is a closed off stadium, but the 49ers decided this time to not stay in, Youngstown as they have in the past. Especially it being a Monday game. So they wanted to come back and make that trip out to Minnesota, which I think is fine. If they feel like that staying for 1 week kind of like made them sluggish or impacted them at all, I'm glad they voiced that and they're doing the right thing this week. But yeah, it should feel like a home crowd out there, which should help the 49ers too.
And Minnesota can get loud. It can be a very tough place to play. So the fact that it's going to be, 43%, whatever you said, Niners fans, that's huge because look, we've seen how these games go, right? You're on the road. We saw it in Cleveland. Cleveland was nuts last week. You could hear fans like banging on the seats and stuff. You let these teams hang around. All of a sudden they get confidence. They get the home crowd, blah, blah, blah. You don't want that. You don't want to deal with any of that. So good on the faithful, baby.
There were actually a decent number of 49er fans in Cleveland too.
Were there? I didn't notice that.
It looked like, if you look at the stands, there was quite a bit of red. But I did hear the trash cans in Cleveland. Like, I don't know what that was about. But yeah, it did get loud. Look, Rob, we didn't see too much of George Kittle on Sunday against the Browns. Maybe they did a great job, covering him. I know, I think one of the missed throws was to Kittle too. So,
yeah,
maybe he could have had a better day. But what's coming up is National Tight End Day. So I think
great.
Why? Okay, for the audio listeners, Rob immediately rolled his eyes. Why the reaction, Rob?
I just want the main thing to be the main thing with George Kittle. Okay. I don't give a crap about your wrestling career that you want to start. I don't give a crap about like all the characters and whatever new tattoo you got. I care about your actual production on the field, sort of your main job. And I know that Kittle, you can't throw the ball to himself and all this stuff, but it's not like Brock Purdy is just bypassing open George Kittle to throw to other people. If George isn't getting the ball, it's because George isn't getting open. So get open. Do something, George. Okay. What did you have? One target last week? Oh, two targets. Excuse me. One catch for 1 yard. Do something. You're getting a ton of money. And it ain't to block, okay? Deuce, I don't give a shit about National Tight End Day. I really don't. Like, he's such a freaking character now. How about you just be a football player for a week? Let's try that, George.
Whew, man.
Oh,
George
God. And he gets all mad at me on Twitter when I say he's not going to finish his contract with the 49ers. Why the hell would they keep you around, George, for your one catch?
They keep restructuring him, so they might not have a choice anyway.
Yeah, that did happen after he got mad at me. They restructured it. But, like, what a waste of money that is. It's a waste of money right now. It is.
Wow. Okay. So if he goes off on Monday night, theoretically, like if he does go off, what are you saying then?
Thanks for doing your job. That's what the money is for, George. Like, yes. And he's good for 2 or 3 of those games every year where he just absolutely dominates. I need to see it. And I feel like, by the way, those games are few and far between, more and more. Like, let's go, George. I'm tired of the 3 catches for 30 yards. I'm tired of it. I don't give a crap if you have 6 good blocks in the game. I don't care. Catch the ball, get open, truck some people, and let's go.
I'm gonna have to, cut up some of what you just said for,
that's fine. And George will get all mad at me, and I could care less. Like,
I'm gonna tag him too. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, I think we would all like to see some more involvement from George Kittle. I do understand that this past week, you were dealing with a very tough Browns defensive line, and Kittle probably had to help, block for a second or two more than he usually would, before running a route. But, I think there's an opportunity for Kittle to have a bigger game, especially if Deebo Samuel plays, but he's not 100%, or, still feeling a little sore. There's an opportunity for George Kittle to get more plays and more balls thrown his way. So hopefully we see that. I also think Brandon Ayuk has a bounce back game. I thought, my personal opinion, I know PFF only had him with one drop, but I thought he dropped 2 balls. One of them was kind of overthrown. So I'll give him that other one. But yeah, I think Brandon Ayuk is going to bounce back in a major way as well. And again, because Ayuk is one of those guys who wants to be considered like one of the, top wide receivers in the game. You have to come down with those.
Yep.
Those guys certainly do, those top guys. So you need to make those impressive grabs. What better game to do it than in prime time? I mean, we saw the 49ers look great against the Cowboys. Another performance like that against this Vikings team would go a long way to expel all of what people were saying all this week, that the 49ers are pretenders. And by the way, Cousins in prime time, not so hot. He's 7 of 11, 7-11. So 7 wins to 11 losses on prime time. So just another thing going in the 49ers' favor heading into Monday.
And let me say 2 things. One more on George Kittle. Like, when they give Kittle the targets, he does usually produce, but he's not getting the targets, or he's not getting open enough to get them. And that something needs to change there. The other thing I like to see, by the way, with Kirk Cousins, let's see this defensive line eat this week. Get sacks, not pressures, sacks.
Yeah. Bosa's gotten the sack 2 games in a row. We'd love to make that 3. The addition of Randy Gregory seemed to be a really good one. Let's see if he can keep it up past 1 game. I think he could, and I think it's going to do wonders for this defensive line. Rob, a lot of people are talking about the trade deadline, and us 49er fans, we're so spoiled. We're so we just always want more, right? And so now, we're still talking about Brian Burns being available there. The Vikings have an edge rusher in Daniel Hunter who could also be available, especially if they lose again on Monday night. Could the 49ers really be in the market for another pass rusher?
Why not? What are they worried about? The 2 pass rushers are going to collide when they get to the quarterback? You can never have enough. I would absolutely be for it. Do it. Now is the time. Warren Buffett, the billionaire, they asked him, how did you make all your money? And he said, when people are cautious, be greedy. And when people are greedy, be cautious. Well, now is the time to be greedy if you're the 49ers. You load up. Go get it. How many more bites at this apple do you think you're going to have? You've got $40 million in cap space. Go get it. I don't care about 2024. Who cares? Who cares about 2025? I'm concerned about 2023. If not now, when?
You heard the man, John Lynch. I mean, make those calls. We want another pass rusher, preferably Brian Burns or Daniel Hunter. But, that's the show for today. Rob, thank you for joining me so early. All of you guys who tuned in, thanks for joining us so early. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, not just my channel, but Rob's as well, the Gold Standard Network. You could find my channel at Steph 49K. We appreciate all of the support. We're here every Thursday morning, so make sure you tune in. And tomorrow I'm going to do a deep dive with Lori Fitzpatrick of this Vikings matchup, so make sure you tune into that as well. But for now, have a good rest of your Thursday, folks. Peace.